Dr. Mike Pandey's talk and everybody at Shama's, I'm not sure what I have to say because I think most things have been said. But what I would like to really touch upon is the fact that the films that we saw, the films of the science films that we saw, have been of a routinely high standard. There were films that were of a pretty high quality. This was the sixth Science Film Festival and competition. But already I can see that the films have been fairly, well-accomplished films. Now, basically, if you ask me, I was the chairman of the jury, what was I looking to see in these films? Of course, everybody knows that you look for aesthetic qualities, competence in filmmaking, and so on. But in terms of communicating, basically the principles remain the same. When I was in advertising, they always used to say the simple principles of communication are, as I think Professor Kenneth had mentioned, which is, 3 W's and an H. You talked about 3 W's and said why, what, when, and how. If you can bring these 4 things into whatever you say or do, then you have communicated yourself well. That was the basis. Now that's the basis of communication in any form, whether you are speaking, whether you're writing, whether you're making films, whether you're doing theater, whatever. So those 3 W's and an H, which I think is absolutely fundamental to any kind of communication, whatever you do. And particularly when it comes to, because there's a basically scientific approach here when we talk about 3 W's and an H. Now, the other aspect, which was also very important in terms of communication, is that there are three elements. One is that when you communicate, people have to be communicated to, which means they have to respond to what you have communicated. Now, the response depends entirely on 3 factors. One is the kind of information that you're going to provide. Secondly, whether it is something that you wish to retain by way of education, whether you're getting something out of it in terms of the content that is being communicated. And thirdly, whether this is being done in a fashion which holds your attention, which means whether you're being entertained. So there's information, education, and entertainment. Now, these 3 things. Now, which order are you going to place them? You see, when you make a cinema film, when you make a film for the cinema where people are going to pay money to come and see your film, obviously, the thing becomes entertainment, information, education. The process is that you start with entertainment. When it comes to a classroom, often what happens is information, education comes before entertainment. Now because you know that you have a captive audience, while when you go to the cinema, you don't actually have a captive audience because you have to hold their interest. In order to hold their interest, you have to make whatever you say entertaining to start off with. So these 2 kinds of things, you have why, what, when, and how, and information, education, and entertainment in different ways, the strategies that you might use depending on where you are and how you are communicating, to which kind of group are you communicating, under what circumstances, under what situations. Now, basically, this really is what I was looking at, particularly when it came to the films that were sent for competition in this science thing. And I found that the quality of the films, of course, there were people who were filmmakers who'd been making films. There were, I think, 4 categories. But the category that interested me most was the one that had to do with students. Now, one of the problems there was the fact that they're not necessarily paying attention to the principles that I have mentioned here. And I think that has a lot to do with the way they are taught in school or college. Basically, that's what it is. And then you find that once that happens, when the whole system by which you get educated, the person who's communicating must be aware of this. This doesn't always happen in schools and colleges. This doesn't happen even in film schools. I've been chairman of the Film and Television Institute twice, and then I always found that there was a certain kind of, there was no awareness of how communication actually takes place. The principle of communication were not being paid attention to. Often it would happen that you were learning something by rote. Nobody was really paying the kind of attention necessary, to go into this business of why, what, when, and how as a principle, and then going beyond that, information, education, and entertainment. Now, this becomes the complex. I really didn't want to say anything more than this because this is basically what it was. The films that came into competition, I was very happy to see, were of a pretty high quality, which you will if you're going to be watching them, because this is part of that. This is the inauguration of that particular festival. You're likely to be seeing some of these films, and some of them are quite exceptional. Thank you very much.